Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 10 of the Vuelta a España 2024, brought to you by Lupine Lights. Lupine Lights, the finest lights I have ridden throughout my career, and I've been riding them since 2019. They have the lights set up for your personal use to run them up on your head. Of course, you can run them on your helmet. You can run them on your bar. They have the app on your phone, so you can dim and raise the light positions on each of the settings so you can get the most out of your battery. And of course, let's not forget Bluetooth connectivity, so you can run it from anywhere. If you're looking to save 24% on your next order of Lupine Lights, use the code LupineLights24. Now let's get into today's stage 10 here, because at 160 kilometers, about 100 miles in length, looks like it's going to be one for the Breakaway specialists when you look at the stage, because there's 4 category climbs, but when we look at the last 3, it's a category 3, category 2, and a category 1. That's 10 kilometers, but at about 6%. As I've always told you up here on the Butterfly Effect, the climbs really start getting difficult around 6%. But for pure climbers, you got to get over that 6% to start having the GC guys thinking about wanting to attack you and light you up going up the climbs, because 6%, ooh, it's average anyways, just not quite enough. You need that 7, 8, 9, and 10% sections of extended periods to be able to start thinking about racing for general classification. So when I went to bed last night, I thought for sure this is a stage for the Breakaway. And when the race comes on at kilometer 0, when we start seeing the attacks right away from Brandon McNulty, we know he's thinking the same thing from UAE team members. He gets wrapped up, and then there's attacks all over the place, but one of the most aggressive riders is going to be WOUT VAN AERT. WOUT VAN AERT's throwing an attack, it gets brought back, he throws in another attack, and it's getting brought back right before the first category 1 climb. This is a tall order right now if you're a big guy, but if you got power like WOUT VAN AERT, maybe you can make it up this category 1 climb. Once we get into the climb proper, we start seeing one of the riders going out the back. It's Cian Uijtdebroeks from Visma Lease a Bike. Now, I've read some interviews of Cian Uijtdebroeks, and he says his legs have been going numb. When you've had a rest day yesterday and you're coming into this climb with about 12, 15 kilometers worth of warm-up coming into this climb, and you're one of the first riders coming off the back, it's time for Visma Lease a Bike to send Cian Uijtdebroeks home right now, unless they have a legitimate reason of why he is coming out the back. Otherwise, at 21 years of age, there is nothing more he can do here at the Vuelta a España if his legs are feeling the same today as I read in his interview, where he doesn't understand why they're not performing and he just keeps losing form throughout the season, throughout the second half of the season and all the way in the Vuelta a España here. He says with him going numb, it's time to send this kid home and send him some time on the couch and in bed and rest up the legs and figure out what the problem is. Up front, they're still racing like crazy, and we'll see it's Christian Rodriguez from Arkea Samsic in this front move. Bora Hansgrohe don't like it because the move's large in number, about 10-12 riders, so Bora Hansgrohe's pulling this group back. They'll bring it all back together, and then we're going to see attack near the top. It's going to be the Solarism going up the road. You guys are like, Chris, you got rid of the ism. Well, we don't know yet because this is the first time Soler's been left off the leash, but maybe we'll figure something out here after stage 10 finishes. Now with Soler going up the road, he's got WOUT VAN AERT locked on his wheel. Then WOUT VAN AERT, the big guy's paying for all the efforts. He's done at least 2-3 attacks on the flat section. He's been in attacks coming up this climb. Now he's paying for some of those efforts as Soler's going solo and WOUT VAN AERT's getting dropped. Well, WOUT VAN AERT gets a little bit of help because we'll see Billy LeSurf there with Billy LeSurf doing some bulk of the work there and WOUT getting a little bit of recovery. They're going to bridge back up to Soler. Now we got 3 riders in the front. In the back, there's still attacks going all over the place, and WOUT VAN AERT, Billy, and of course, Solarism are going up the road. You're like, there's the ism again. I know, we'll have to see. But with these 3 riders going up the road with not much of a gap, attacks are still going all over the place. Now we're going to see 2 more riders go across. It's Albacin de Koenig, Yuri Holman there, and then it's Quentin Pashier from FDJ. These 2 riders are drilling it. And in the back, the Peloton from AG2R, they're kind of trying to slow things down, but they're still aggressive back there in the race and still going full gas. We start looking up front, and these 2 riders are going to bridge up to the 3. Now we got 5 riders in the front group, and WOUT VAN AERT is drilling it up there. We go back to the Peloton. It's about 100 kilometers to go. And we see the race leader, Ben O'Connor. He's going back to the feed there as he's pulling off to the right side of the road. This is looking a little bit precarious right now because he's at the back of the Peloton and it's still full gas at the front with things being strung out. AG2R have done a magical job so far of protecting Ben O'Connor's race leader's jersey here and always at the front at the right time. And Ben O'Connor, if I back the film up, he's always been at the front. This is the one moment when I've seen him at the back and it's still going full gas. And we see a group of about 10 riders with Woods up there and Primoz Roglic in the group. But we see AG2R back there just to the far behind the group there, just still in sight, but AG2R is pulling this group up here with Primoz Roglic, and with Woods driving it hard, and they'll bring it back together while Ben O'Connor, race leader's red jersey, is at the back of the peloton. Never a good time to drop to the back of the peloton while you're still going uphill. I know they went over the top of the first KOM already, and it was Wout van Aert that got maximum points, but with 100 kilometers still to go, with attack still on, Ben O'Connor was in the wrong spot at this moment. I'm splitting hairs a little bit, but it was still the wrong time to be back there when Primoz Roglic is going up in attack still. Now everything comes back together as the peloton, but up front we still got 5 riders. Now we're going to see Demarque. The gap's at about 39 seconds when he took off. This is a tall order to bring back and bridge across to this group because it's Wout van Aert up there. Quentin Pachere's up there. And we see Marc Soler. With this kind of power in this front group of 5 and with the peloton behind still at about a minute and 30, 2-minute gap, it's going to be difficult for Demarque to bridge his gap. So eventually he's going to pull the plug once the gap gets up to about a minute and 30 to him. He sits up and goes back. Now these 5 riders here got a long leash. As the peloton's going a little more curb to curb, AG2R's at the front, controlling everything but calming everything down. The 5-rider gap starts extending quickly. We get into the next of the climbs here. Climb number 2, it's with 3 to go. This one's a category 3 climb, and the gap is at 6 minutes and 20 seconds to the 5 riders. They'll go over the top of this. It's Billy Lesurf from Soudal Quickstep grabbing maximum points, and then they drop down the descent. They'll do the next climb with about the same time as before at about 5.5, 6-minute gap, and no stress on the 5 riders in front as they're all working well together. At the top of the KOM, right now it's going to be Wout van Aert taking his 2nd KOM here on stage 10 of the Vuelta a España, and they still got a gap. Now things start getting interesting with about 32 kilometers to go as we see Marc Soler. He's raising his hand. He wants his car to come up, and we see the Alpecin de Koenig car come up there to feed Yuri as we see Soler is now starting to get frustrated, I assume with the official car, and it's going to take a little bit longer for his UAE team member's car to arrive. While it's arriving, Wout van Aert's looked back over his shoulder. There's 4 riders at the front, and Alpecin de Koenig car has already fed there Yuri. With that in mind, we're coming up to the sprint line competition, and this is where we see the Solerism. Okay, guys, he's been let off the leash, right? This is where we start seeing mistakes from Marc Soler. He goes back to the car. He threw a little bit of a fit there. The car finally gets up there, and he's still got to get fed. As he's getting fed, we see Wout van Aert start his sprint. He takes off hard to the right, and you can tell when you're sitting on the Chesterfield, Wout van Aert is going to keep going with this move. There is no reason that Wout van Aert would jump this hard if he wasn't going to continue the attack, because we're coming up to the final KOM after the sprint line competition. Soler hasn't figured this out. The director sportif in the car hasn't figured out to tell Soler, just get up to the back of the group there as fast as you can. They're still feeding Marc Soler when we see Wout van Aert pass the sprint line points competition that he wins to buffer the green jersey that he's wearing. As Wout van Aert's going full gas, the hand's in the cookie jar there from Soler back there with his car. He'll wrap up with the car, and then he'll bridge up to the back of the group, but Quentin Pacher from FDJ is already bridging across up there to Wout van Aert after the sprint line competition. We get 2 guys up there, 3 chasing, with Marc Soler finally on the back of that group, rotating through. But when you're sitting on the Chesterfield, you know these knuckleheads made mistakes all over. I backed the film up all the way to when this break originally began. Who wants to work with Wout van Aert in a group when we're going over category 3, 2, and category 1 climb? You need HC climbs, and you need that category 1 climb to be like it was way back there when Primoz Roglic won. They called it a category 3, but it was really a hard category 1 with 15% sections. That doesn't exist today. They're soft. It's a 6% climb that Wout van Aert's drilling it into. They're going to lead into this climb with about a 20-30 second gap on the 3 chasers behind, and Wout van Aert and Quentin Pacher are rotating through. Now, I'm watching this on Flow Bikes when we got Hannah Walker and Nico Roche, and Nico Roche has not told the fans sitting at home at this moment that Quentin Pacher needs to sit on. But if I back the film all the way up quite a ways, Nico Roche had said tactically when you have Wout van Aert, if you make it over this climb, you want to start attacking him because then it could come down to a tactical game. The problem is, at this moment, Nico Roche is not reminding anyone and not talking about how right now Quentin Paschier needs to stop working with Wout van Aert, because tactically he has no tactics available to him if he keeps riding with Wout van Aert. Well, they keep riding. We start looking at the group of 3 behind. We're about 2 kilometers into this climb, and Yuri Holman there from Alpecin de Koenig starting to get popped off the back. Solaire's doing the bulk of the work on the front. We see Billy Lesurf from Soudal Quickstep sitting on mostly. He will rotate through a little bit and help out Solaire. Then we start seeing the Peloton coming into this climb as they started proper. AG2R still on the front. They got 3 riders doing a fine job. Ben O'Connor's there, Felix Gaull's there, and Valentin Parapente is at the front and riding for Ben O'Connor. As these 3 guys for AG2R are controlling the front of the peloton, it looks like it's going to be a smooth ride up until we get about halfway. Then we start seeing EF Education getting on the front. What are these knuckleheads thinking? Well, it's Cepeda on the front for Carapaz. We saw a fine ride on stage 9 for Richard Carapaz, and we saw his teammates doing marvelous work on that climb, the third climb before the finish of stage 9, where they were trying to make up 4 minutes gap for Carapaz, and they were launching him up the road. But that day they had Darren Rafferty up in the front group, and if I back the film up, Darren Rafferty, the Irish national champions, getting popped out of this group while Cepeda's on the front drilling it. Now, what are they going to do? Well, we go back up to the front of the group still and start seeing Wout van Aert and Quentin Paschier still working together. They're going to go over the top of the KOM together with Wout van Aert grabbing maximum points, and now he's tied for the KOM jersey competition with Adam Yates. As those 2 drop over, they got a solid 40, 50, 1 minute gap on the 2 chasers behind. And as the 2 chasers come over the top, we see Solaire and we see Billy Lesurf dropping down the descent, and Marc Solaire, the Solaireism's getting gapped off going down the descent. This is remarkable. I don't know how you could get gapped coming down this kind of descent, but Solaire's got a wheel gap and this keeps extending out there to Billy Lesurf. He'll finally find his way back on, but the 2 riders are well down a minute back from the 2 riders in front. You know, if you're sitting at home, that it's a two-way battle up front, but really it's only one, because it's Wout van Aert. If Quentin Paschier continues to do even pulls with Wout van Aert, and every time the cameras come up, Quentin Paschier is doing even pulls with Wout van Aert. As we look back at the peloton, Cepeda's done after about 2 kilometers of hard work at the front. There's about 2.5 kilometers still to go, and what does Carapaz do? Nothing. Because that was the wise move. The wrong move was to put Cepeda on the front to begin with, but now Carapaz is wised up. He hasn't done anything. It's a select group of about 25, 30 riders in the front, but nobody's attacking, so we see Parapente riding the front, controlling the peloton. He'll continue to do that all the way up to the top of the KOM. Now we're coming into 8 kilometers to go. It's the last little bump, and I'm sitting there like, okay, Quentin Paschier, you got to do something. I don't know if it's a good idea to attack Wout van Aert, and you really can't at this moment, but you got to at least sit on Wout van Aert coming up over this little bump down the descent into the coast. But Quentin Paschier is actually pulling on the front. He'll help pull on the front. They'll drop down to the coast with about 4 kilometers to go. When I back the film up to the 2 chasers, well, Marc Solaire is going so slow down this hill here, holding up Billy Lesurf too, that we see Yuri Holman get back on. Now we got 3 riders, but they're 2 minutes back from the time there, the 2 riders up front. We go into 1.6 kilometers to go. This is the first attack right here from Quentin Paschier from FDJ. He throws in attack. Of course, Wout van Aert knew it was coming, covered it directly, sat on his wheel. Quentin Paschier doesn't sit up. He keeps riding on the front. He keeps riding into 1 kilometer to go. He's got Wout van Aert, the big guy, the number 5 best rider in the world, already 2-time stage winner here at the Vuelta a España, sitting directly on his wheel. Quentin Paschier starts looking over his shoulder. He looks over some more. And then at 200 meters to go, Wout van Aert, the big guy, kicks it into gear, turbo straight past Quentin Paschier, whose head drops immediately as he knows he's getting second on the stage. Wout van Aert looks over his shoulder, knows he's going to win today's stage, sits up, celebrates with 3 fingers as this is his 3rd victory here at the Vuelta a España, 2nd victory on Spanish soil. As the Belgian rider crosses the finish line, he's going to wait there on the center of the road till Quentin Paschier comes through, gives him a congratulatory shake of the hand there and a little hug. Then he's going to ride over to his family where he's got his baby and his kids there hanging out for him. So it's time for hugs and it's time for smooches from the wife. Then it's time to go up and celebrate up on the podium with your family as you take home a 3rd victory here for Visma Lease a Bike. Once that's all getting about wrapped up, we're going to start seeing the 3 chasers come in 2 minutes later, and it's the Solarism crossing the line to round out the podium. With that in mind, we got to wait another 3-4 more minutes as we see the Peloton come through, but no changes in the top 10 general classification as Ben O'Connor will hold the race leader's red jersey. When it's all said and done, Ben O'Connor said his team rode perfectly. They really did. When he was asked why the gap was still so close, Ben O'Connor said it really wasn't us making the gap there at 6 minutes. It was us riding a steady tempo and then other teams accelerating. That's why the gap was at 6 minutes. He's correct. Their whole team raced fantastic. And if I'm pulling hairs and picking hairs here, the only thing I could say is at 100 kilometers to go. Ben, as I already talked about, don't get the feed zone. Don't go through the feed zone at the back of the Peloton while there's still possibilities of attacks from Primoz Roglic, Bora Hansgrohe with Michael Woods up there drilling it. That was probably the only dangerous situation I saw throughout this 160 kilometers. Otherwise, as you said in your interview, you guys were perfect today. Congratulations, tip of the hat. You still got the race leader's red jersey here at the Vuelta a España. Now, tomorrow's stage, to me, looks like one for the breakaway. If we were at the Tour de France and you had 15 teams here with 15 different sprinters, I would say this would be a field sprint stage, no doubt. But when we have such a lack of sprinters here, this Melissa Bikes Wout van Aert has 3 stage victories already, so he probably isn't going to want to ride his team on the front. The last climb at the finish, that'll summit with about 8 kilometers to go at 9%. So 3 kilometers at 9%. Looks like it'd be a bit too steep there for Albacine's, the Koenig, Caden Groves team to want to do all that work just to get in a 9% climb of 3 kilometers and then get dropped. So I got to believe it's another stage for the breakaway. Should be full gas throughout the whole stage before the break gets away. Then we're going to see much like we did today until the GC guys get into that 9% climb for 3 kilometers. Then maybe we might see a little GC battle there because at 9%, it's quite possible somebody can lose some time. That's on the top 10 of the general classification. Will it be Ben O'Connor? I don't know. Primoz Roglic is going to have to be pretty special to drop Ben O'Connor, but we don't know yet because we haven't seen Primoz Roglic at 100%. Will it come tomorrow? Like and subscribe, and I'll tell you about it if it does. See you on the next video real soon.